Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to peel back the terrifying layers of a film that presents itself as a standard horror story, but actually hides something so much darker in its shadows. We're going to examine how the visual architecture of this nightmare, the creeping shadows, the incredibly claustrophobic framing, isn't built with your typical ghosts or demons, but with deep human psychology. So let's dive into the anatomy of this nightmare and uncover the true horror of the so-called nice guy.
Plunging right into the darkness, we have to start with a genuinely chilling question. What if the real monster isn't supernatural at all? What if the monster is just a nice guy who desperately wants to be loved? It's a question that completely forces us to reconsider everything we think we know about this narrative. Because as you'll see, the most terrifying villains often don't wear grotesque masks. They wear a friendly smile and a seemingly innocent desire for affection, usually bathed in warm, everyday lighting.
Section 1. Beyond Simple Horror, a Metaphorical Critique.
You see, rather than just relying on cheap jump scares, the director uses the visual language of horror, stark contrasts, and deeply isolating camera work to dissect a very real modern subculture, the manosphere and the red pill ideology. To really grasp the foundation of this story, we must first look at these concepts objectively. These are online communities built around a specific sociological belief system. This worldview suggests that women inherently choose attractive, dominant men, while unfairly and consistently rejecting the good guys. It's a worldview framing a landscape where the self-proclaimed nice guy is the perpetual victim. And honestly, this is the exact cultural backdrop the film brilliantly uses to build its visual and psychological tension.
Moving on to Section 2, the good boy beer stereotype.
Now this is where our protagonist, Beer, enters the picture. Visually, he's introduced so harmlessly. He's brightly lit, embodying that quintessential nice guy stereotype absolutely perfectly. But that visual illusion quickly cracks, giving way to much darker undertones. As the source material points out, Beer's primary drive isn't actually a selfless love for the female protagonist, Nikki. Instead, it is a desperate, all-consuming need for continuous validation. He needs to be confirmed. He needs to be loved. This is a massive pivot in understanding the true horror of his character. His desires are entirely self-centered, completely prioritizing his own validation over her actual freedom.
And this dark obsession manifests into a literal living nightmare on screen. His ultimate priority is not Nikki's freedom, but ensuring she remains completely devoted to him. The source notes that if it were up to him, he would spend his entire life keeping her practically chained up, so long as it meant she remained devoted. The film visually suffocates the viewer in these moments. It mirrors his need for control through incredibly tight, uncomfortable, claustrophobic framing. He only starts questioning the cost of this desire when the situation becomes completely uncontrollable and physically dangerous for him.
Which brings us to Section 3, the narcissistic wound, the fragile facade.
Beneath this nice guy facade lies a deep, unbearable fragility that dictates every single horrific action he takes. There is this visually harrowing moment in the dead of night where Nikki briefly breaks through her curse. She's covered in the blood and grime of her horrific reality. The lighting shifts to this sickening, unnatural hue, and she begs Beer to kill her just to end her immense suffering. And how does the nice guy respond to the person he supposedly loves being in absolute agony? He ignores her pain completely. He chillingly asks, "Is it so bad to be with me?" He is completely blind to her needs, totally unable to tolerate the mere idea that being with him is exhausting or painful for her.
So the crucial takeaway here is that his desire, well, actually, scratch that. It's not even desire. It's a psychological tool to erase the very possibility of being rejected by her. Because he forces this twisted reality upon her to protect his own fragile ego, his so-called love transforms into continuous, terrifying psychological violence and physical coercion. When he finally realizes he has forced her into this visually gruesome existence, his entire reality begins to collapse around him.
Section 4, the curse of love, unsettling themes. We are now unpacking what is probably the most unsettling theme of the film, the realization that simply desiring someone does not make that love ideal. In fact, forming a relationship often acts as a dark amplifier for dysfunction, things like attachment, jealousy, possession, and a deep fear of abandonment. It takes the specific way a person experiences relationships and cranks the volume all the way up to maximum. If a person's baseline is dysfunctional, the relationship will inevitably spiral down a descending staircase into catastrophic madness. The director masterfully reflects this spiral through increasingly chaotic and disorienting camera work, regardless of how much passion or desire was there in the beginning.
We can starkly contrast this reality. On one hand, true, healthy love is oriented toward the mutual well-being of both people. If you truly loved someone and saw the relationship was destroying them, you would choose to step away, right? On the other hand, the film's curse represents a subpathological erasure of all boundaries. Nikki, influenced by the curse and her own teenage intensity, interprets love as an absolute erasure of all distances. It takes her natural tendencies and amplifies them into something visually and emotionally monstrous.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the true victim, unmasking the horror. As we hit the absolute bottom of this psychological descent, the true dynamic is completely unmasked. Two people can look at each other and both say, "I love you," but they can live that love in radically, terrifyingly different ways. For one, love might mean care, growth, and mutual respect. For another, love can mean dependency, forced sacrifice, possession, and absolute control. The true horror lies in the fact that the exact same three words can be a promise of safety or the locking of a cage.
Because of this horrific mismatch, the film's visual nightmare finally makes perfect sense. Beer's desire is both tragically naive and profoundly violent. Beneath his bright, harmless, nice guy illusion, Beer is the captor. And Nikki, despite everything grotesque that happens to her on screen, is undeniably the true victim of this story. The monster was never hiding in the shadows under the bed. He was the one standing in the light, demanding to be loved.
I want to leave you with a lingering, unsettling question to reflect on as we wrap up. The moral of this terrifying story is that it simply isn't enough to just ask to be loved. You have to look closely into the dark and ask exactly how that other person loves. Because sometimes, being loved by the wrong person is the most horrifying fate of all. Thank you so much for joining me as we explored the anatomy of this nightmare. Keep analyzing, and I will see you in the next explainer.